Hello, internet friends. My name is Bay. Welcome back to the Shadowlands Alpha. First pass coverage to be the wrap-up, sort of how is it so far, thoughts, and a couple of the things that you may have not heard about for the overall rogue class currently right now in the alpha for Shadowlands. And I think the biggest thing that I'll be going over here, and I'll probably have to say this in every single one of these sort of wrap-up videos in some way, shape, or form, I imagine, because I'm not scripting these or anything, right? Just of an additional like stream of consciousness. I have my notes in front of me, of course, here, and what you're seeing in the background is always a dungeon run. It's the Outlaw rogue footage right now, derping on some things, testing some other things out, trying to see if Killing Spree with the new Between the Eyes window is any good. Granted, numbers are numbers right now, and who really cares about numbers just kind of feels like, does it feel good to play? Does it work well together? And obviously no Covenant abilities or anything that I'm testing right now. But overall, if you are curious to where you can keep up to date with where I do all this testing, the channel guide is in the description box. But also in there is all my relative socials, links here and there. In particular, however, I'll draw your attention to where I post whenever I'm going live, which goes up in my Discord and on my Twitter page. So links down below if you use the Twitter. If you want to go follow me over there at FinalBossTV. Whenever I post a new video, whenever I post a live stream, all that stuff all happens over on my Twitter page. So really easy to go follow that if in case you would like the additional wherewithal on when things happen. And then of course everything goes up in my Discord as well if you have questions for me over there, or you want to see when I'm live specifically, because Discord tells you when that's happening. That's all in the description box right down here on the YouTube channel. But rogue overall. So one thing that was mentioned in different videos but not necessarily always told about was the Crimson Vial changes, because it's not nerfed. It's in any way it's almost better, but it's just weaker. The big thing about Crimson Vial is I want to make sure I read this out real quick here from the giant blue post. So what it says as well, like more iconic rogue traits have come back, but I want to say, so let's see here. What does it say in this big post? Pickpocket will frequently uncover new ingredients that can be mixed into the rogue's Crimson Vial, augmenting its power the next time the rogue drinks it. So this is another reason why potentially Crimson Vial looks weaker on the surface. It changed from live to 30% of your HP over 3 seconds with 30 energy cost, 333. Now it's 20% of your HP over 2 for 20 energy. So it was cut down, but if Pickpocket is buffing your next use, potentially it's not going to do a whole lot for you in raids and dungeons unless you can keep pickpocketing between mob packs, potentially. That is definitely a flavor that rogues have not really had much use for. It has been like different little things you've used pickpocket for before in the past, but bringing a little bit of that RPG back to give you, who knows what's going to bring you. Everything that currently is in the database for the Crimson Vial buffs are NYI, which means not yet implemented. And we don't know if every single thing is the next one use only, right? So what if it's not the next only one use? What if it is the next 3, or the next one if it's something more important, or if it's like a big, huge heal and it's the next one use, or we don't know yet. So that'll be a neat little thing for the rogues overall. So I wanted to make sure you're aware of that. It's baseline a little weaker, but overall there is that RP element where you can be pickpocketing things and having big Crimson Vials, and you can save that for like a huge, oh crap moment in raids. Or can you hold different ingredients in your inventory and just have a stockpile of them, old rogue style, with having poisoned ingredients or whatever? I don't know. Which of course that brings me to poisons. Poisons are back for every single rogue and interactions with Shiv, which I think is also what I was opening up this video about, ranting about the things I'm going to be saying over and over again in every single one of these sort of class wrap-up videos, is that instead of giving every single class in the game, or every single spec in the game, a battle shout, or a fortitude, or a chaos brand kind of a deal, right? These multiplicative things that bring that extra little something, sorry, I hit microphone there, that bring that extra little something to the raid environment, a dungeon environment, etc. Obviously, in normal and heroic raids and LFR, you have 25 or 30 people. Not as that little different. Mythic, only 20. And in a 5-man scenario, in Mythic Plus, only 5. So what you bring really determines what you are going to have at your disposal. Things like AoE capping, right? So Fan of Knives or Shuriken Storm having different AoE caps than Blade Flurry, for example. But Blade Flurry might just, because it's constant, even the change to Blade Flurry for the Outlaw Rogue having 1 charge down from 2, Cleave capped at +4 nearby, which is usually 8 yards down from all, losing Acrobatic Strikes, adding that extra range to your abilities, which obviously would lower your amount of damage you're doing to things around you, but again, it's only 4. Still 15 energy, cooldown increased to 30 seconds, up from 25-second recharge rates. Damage buffed up currently to 40% of that echo damage, up from 30, but also it works with your baseline Restless Blades. So as I show off in the previous video with Outlaw Rogue, it's like 100% uptime. But that is uptime that you're just leaving it and you're doing your overall rotation and you're focusing the main target, or you're using the new Between the Eyes window. Couldn't think of the name there for a moment. Been testing Rogue too long. But Between the Eyes now adds crit, chance, and damage to your main target, which means that when your Sinister Strikes or your Dispatches crit on your target you're attacking, they hit harder in Blade Flurry. So there's interplay there versus the Assassination Rogue just throwing out their AoE Deadly Poison and hoping for extra combo points with Sealed Fate, right? And then using Rupture or potentially Crimson Tempest, and then maybe focusing down a main target like I was doing in the Assassination Rogue dungeon, which you can check on the channel guide if you want to see there. I was rolling with, so like Iron Wire and Subterfuge for a big Garrote from stealth into a very quick 5 combo point Crimson Tempest, and then that hits, of course, the mobs around me, but then I would exsanguinate the main target to make the Garrote and the Crimson Tempest do more damage while I'm funneling that caster or, bear buffer or big old vampire lady down, right? So that worked in the same way, but different than what you may do on live. And those are the little things you'll be paying attention to. And I think to wrap this all back up, this whole big long tirade, Rogues getting back their poisons, Rogues getting back their Shiv interactions. They're having Crippling Poison. Numbing Poison might be way overpowered. Currently, I don't know if it even works properly. Numbing Poison reads that it is a 15% attack speed and casting speed debuff, but that's not actually represented in the debuff on the mobs. So that's probably just not hooked up right properly. But Numbing Poison with Shiv is a Enrage Dispel, which until now it's only Trank Shot for Hunters and Soothe for Druids. So you have that little bit of extra something you're bringing, and that's, I think, what they're trying to do. Blizzard is the they in this sentence. Instead of just giving you a Rogues also have 5% damage taken from physical damage. Like, they're not just doing that. They're adding something a little bit more player interactable. And I'm a little more okay with that because that is flavor. That's the RPG essence of what Class A and B and C bring. Not just, do we have all the multipliers that stack on top of each other? And I plan to make a video about that as well from a Mythic standpoint, where there might be, like, I think, currently between 12 and 13 required, air quotes, which you can't see, but you can hear them, air quotes, for all the different mandatory, you must bring a warrior and a demon hunter and a monk and a mage and a priest and 2 warlocks because of curses and X, Y, and Z, A, B, and C to bring to raids to maximize your overall potential. But I think that, of course, a big thing about Rogues is that you're going to be deciding upon a lot of your build hierarchy based on your talents, first off. And there's a lot of numbers in there, like damage per comma point, per energy, per yada yada. All those things that Koji and crew and all the really smart rogues and all the spreadsheets and all the mathing, all the shadow crafting work will figure out, right? And that usually determines certain things. But that only determines certain things at a really high level normally. Say, for example, my notes in front of me right now have the Subtlety Rogue changes with the new Shadow Bolt, the Shadow Vault, not Shadow Bolt. That's Warlocks, that's down the road. But Shadow Vault is a new AoE finisher for Sub Rogue, which is kind of pretty weak, but also interacts with how Shuriken Storm and Find Weakness are baseline, and the new Symbols of Death, which is basically a combo point generator, forced crit, cold blood, you, as the sub-rogue, might be obviously brought for your crazy AoE 2 single target damage funnel with how Shuriken Storm gives you combo points per target hit, literally. And it's hard capped at 8, but its AoE damage is pitiful. But now, at least when you're doing that on a sub-rogue, when you're funneling damage into the back of a mob's butt, usually, for the thing that really matters, a la Zool style, even with Shuriken Tornado, which things like that are ridiculous right now with the new Symbols of Death, is you have this oomph to your AoE isn't like a wet fart. It actually does something while you're doing the thing that you're brought for or you excel at. And that's, I think, how all rogues now, and this, of course, numbers, who knows? Assassination Rogue will still probably major on single target, and Outlaw will still be crazy AoE because it's constantly in the Blade Flurry window and constantly hitting the main target +4. Even if it's not spread ridiculous AoE, they're still always, that's numbers. But how the game is changing, how dungeons so far feel where you're pulling, 2, 3, 4 mobs at a time. Mass AoE pulling could be a thing, but say, for example, in Halls of Atonement, the footage in the background right now, you'll see us do some shenanigans on like the bear mobs, which are, it's like the hunter and the 2 giant bear, like Gorgon gargoyle things. They have an awful bleed that put on the tank. So you focus the bears down, right? Maybe put some different stuns on them so your tank doesn't get chunked. But then if you don't CC the actual hunter, she buffs the bears to do just overall more damage. And of course they could be kited, but I can't imagine pulling like multiple packs of those together, because if too many stacks of the bleed go up on your tank just bricks. And as in a dungeon scales up, what if there's also necrotic and the bears having the crazy bleed? So you've got 2 different bleeds on you at the same time, both the bear bleed stacks from each individual bear and the necrotic stacks, reducing the healing you take and doing the damage to your tank. So I wonder if Blizzard wants kind of more 3, 4, 5-ish packs, like a dangerous pack here, easy pack there. If those mobs are like trash, like the little gargoyle floaty boys, grab them all together, AoE them down, big deal. But if it's like 4 big old vampires, maybe CC the caster vampire and focus on the fencing vampires that put giant blood pools down or something first, right? Because they don't like, obviously Blizzard, they don't like the current Motherlode style, pull 40 mobs, nothing as AoE caps really, and blitz them all down. And we lived in the multiple seasons of the Outlaw Rogue with all their different stacking things that made Blade Flurry so ridiculous for them, where we saw double Outlaw Rogue. Was it double Outlaw Rogue Windwalker for a time? And then it was still double Outlaw Rogue X for a time. And now it's all like Unholy Death Knight because they're multiplicative scaling, quadratic, nonsensical AoE garbage with Epidemic and whatever, right? That's being cut down as well. The Epidemic effect, or the bursting virulent plague effect on Unholy doesn't burst randomly and then hit everything around it again. So they want, I would say, more methodical pulls, and I wonder if that's the change that they're trying to implement here with all of the class baseline, and which rogue you bring to that situation, of course, may or may not determine either numerically, as a pure DPS class normally goes like, well, Outlaw's a little bit ahead right now overall. But if it's a fortified dungeon, maybe you focus more on the AoE because you're going to be fighting trash for 80% of the run, not bosses. Maybe Tyrannical, though, you want to focus on the boss damage. That may change your mind between sub or assassination and outlaw. And if you're a rogue player, I would imagine you probably maybe mainline 1 rogue spec. I can understand that. But if you're a rogue player, maybe you're also not just playing 1 rogue spec. Maybe you're playing a bunch of rogue specs and you want to be able to move between the different rogue specs or even the different play styles in between them. And that's where like the Covenant system may come into play. Granted, you have to build your own legendaries, and I'm not sure legendaries will be sort of spec across. If that means like if you get an ability that maybe buffs Rupture or does something with Rupture, that'll do something with both subtlety and assassination, but won't work with Outlaw. But we don't know that yet. And I wonder if, depending on your choices therein, if the legendary system doesn't, at first it might, doesn't pigeonhole you. Eventually, you can be able to not only spec one of your 3 different soul binds for, say, Outlaw Rogue, and then you switch that over. Any rested area, apparently you can switch those. There'll be some new UI element, I guess. You can have your Outlaw Rogue AoE soul bind for Mythic Plus, but then you can have your single target, you know, blasting Danny DeVito style sub rogue for raids, a different Covenant soul bind that is then tweaked for that specific situation you're in. And I hope that's what it works out to be for the pure DPS classes. Rogue, in the same vein as Mage, Warlock, and Hunter. Hunter is a weird one because of survival, I guess, but you know what I mean. Is that if you're able to actually change your spec and not just say, well, I'm an assassination rogue because they do 15% more damage all the time, right? Which normally that kind of works out, but right now there are still sub-rogues blasting Mythic Ny'alotha at a higher end tier, and they're still parses, and their guild obviously is killing things. And if you're not vying for like the top 50 world spots or so, you really can play whatever you want. Maybe like outside the top 100 world, you want to go like, you know, super back-end nonsensical about it, but at the same time, realistically, you should be able to not be forced into playing just one thing if you play that class. But 1 minute, I hydrate. But that all usually comes down to rogue, specifically with numbers. And I get that. I understand. There's always like, well, if you're doing, say, nonsense with Subtlety Rogue and you're stacking all your multipliers together on the new Shadow Dance window, of course, which is very different. But again, as I've said in like all the Rogue videos, a lot of the changes are kind of, they're big, but they're not big changes. Like 1 or 2 big tweaks, like Find Weakness being baseline for Subtlety now, opens up this whole new world of, well, these talents might pair well together now in this situation because I don't have to take Find Weakness. And that does just crack open the class just a touch more. And I think all 3 of them, lesser extent to Assassination. Assassination's biggest thing is mostly just Slice and Dice baseline, which is a huge auto attack steroid. But I think Slice and Dice still probably affects both Outlaw and Subtlety more. But there's all these different things in my notes that I have here that are all these like small tweaks, right? And the reworked sort of blindside ambush potential with Assassination, or maybe Crimson Tempest just being better than, so you actually have more than just like spamming Falk and spreading your deadly poison and then just hoping for crits for Sealed Fate and then just hitting Rupture on things, right? So maybe you'll actually have the ability to feel like you actually get to AoE in bigger AoE situations. Subtlety, same kind of thing, even though they will not, I don't think you'll ever be brought as a sub-rogue to do AoE. At least it means when you are AoEing to funnel in that regard, either being at Rupture Cleave or with the Shadow Technique. I actually had to look at the, what's the talent for it? The weird one, the Naruto Kagebutsu no Jutsu secret technique. But that cools down faster the more combo point spenders you use, so it's weird to think that you might actually be able to still pass by with these abilities. And that's the big thing that I'm reading from all the rogue changes, and hopefully if you're playing a rogue, you get to not stay, I'm just playing Assassination for 3 tiers in a row, right? And waiting on stacking my bleeds and my poisons and then just sitting here and auto-attacking or whatever, right? So the overall Shadow Dance window changes, the Slice and Dice being baseline for Assassination, which is still probably the most unchanged spec, but then again, they have the better poisons, and overall, you have the new wound poison, which means Assassination Rogue has the best wound poison debuff at 5 stacks for 25% healing reduction or 28% with Master Poisoner. And that's like their big other push. So if things heal in dungeons or raids, maybe that's your way to nudge yourself that direction. Not just the damage, but the extra utility point, right? That increased decision making beforehand might be the better play there, not just I have to Danny DeVito and blast and play Subtlety Rogue right now. So all of that together, I think, really wraps up Rogue in a obviously rather ranty way, because I don't know how this will work out once numbers come into play. But I think that a lot of rogues, potentially ones listening right now, hope that it isn't the case, and they can play. They want to go Venthyr, right? And they want to go like brooding, dark, goth, subtlety rogue. You know, a big old dark ninja action there, and that like works for them, and they can play that. But if you don't want that specifically, if you want to go, I don't know, what's like the Night Fae is probably the weirdest one for rogue. But what if that is like that's your pirate fantasy where you're like you're jolly. Jolly Roger, you crash landed on the planet, and then it's like, oh, I like trees and fairy stuff, and that could go, different ways, directions if you're just a drunken pirate. But you gotta, I mean, the armor wood set, the leather looks pretty neat if you want to go that way, and you should be able to pick whichever one you'd like to, right? Because the Covenant ability baseline may not be the only way you decide what you use, because of the customization behind that in the Soulbind system and the 3 different Soulbinds, and the fact that they're also augmentable and customizable just that little bit more, that could add that extra layer to you to choose. And a little bit of RP coming back with the Crimson Vial pickpocket stuff. All rogues having their poisons again, even if you don't make your own poisons, which I still kind of think if they brought back poisons, why don't they go the full 9? And allow you to actually, because it's weird, when you apply your poisons as a rogue, you just click the button and it puts the buff up. But me as a shaman testing, I have Wind Fury and Flame Tongue back. I actually put my buff on my weapon, Wind Fury main hand, Flame Tongue offhand, for example. And that feels more like putting poisons on your weapons than how poisons work right now. But I guess that's a change that's from way back in the day, how it's a buff on the rogue and it's on either weapon, not just your main hand, not just your offhand. But should it not be that way, maybe? I don't know. That may be getting too much into the weeds on all that stuff. Fleet-footed, of course, I didn't bring this up. This is in my overall notes. Fleet-footed has a rank 2 at level 42, which reduces your fall damage. And as I say that right now, let me make sure I double check, because that's not in the game right now, I believe. Well, it's split. You have the movement speed and then the reduced fall damage. But then if you're a subtlety rogue, if you watch that video or seen how Shadow Vault works, you can actually immune fall damage. You can not take fall damage at all as a sub rogue if you have any combo points, which you can make with just throwing a shuriken. So that's like in their whole ninja fantasy, which hopefully doesn't get broken for them. That's super neat. Hopefully it doesn't break any encounters by not taking fall damage, but all rogues taking reduced, of course. Obviously, subtlety rogue used to be immune to it. You can still kind of break fall damage with grappling hook. And if you haven't seen retractable hook, the new retractable hook in Shadowlands is real dumb. It basically is just heroic leap. It's really, really, really fast. So, but that obviously is like moment to moment, kind of splash movement speed, whereas hit and run or Night Stalker, because you're in stealth to open as Outlaw. I noticed it today, and the footage you can see in the background when I'm like stealthing pretty slowly. I think I sprinted a few times in stealth to like catch up to the mobs. So I want to open with like a cheap shot, right? Because I'm running with Prey on the Weak and opening on a mob with Prey on the Weak, and then following up with a big old cheap, a kidney shot on the next mob to put Prey on the Weak on them is super good dungeon utility on top of everything else you've already got. So rogues have a lot. I think I've heard the negative feedback. They seem very squishy while leveling, which is part and part because of the Crimson Vial nerf. But then you don't have the new pickpocket Crimson Vial, so we don't know how it's going to work. Obviously, Covenant abilities aren't all in place yet to even have. And the template characters are real trash. They are so incredibly weak. They are essentially like boosted level 50s. They are wearing normal-ish dungeon gear from BFA. And maybe your ult is that badly geared, but most of people are going to be at least, I would imagine, somewhere in the heroic ballpark of gear. And if you're a mythically geared character, you're easily almost double the eye level of the template characters for leveling. You're not going to feel the damage when you get smacked for like a few hundred when you have 10k HP versus when you have 24-ish thousand HP and you get smacked for a few hundred. You're going to pull multiple mobs that AoE it all down and be fine. But let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below, of course. Hit that subscribe button on my YouTube channel or check out the socials, mainly, of course, Twitter, if you want to know when I'm going live, or you can join my Discord server. I didn't mention earlier, my Discord server is sort of half and half. Patrons that are over on my Patreon page or subs on Twitch, there's more channels for them. But you can see when I'm going live. You can see the announcements page. There's the general chat stuff like that if you have questions for me or you have thoughts about it, or if you have alpha access and would like to do dungeon runs with me in the future. That is all very helpful. And of course, all that is in the description box down below. But I'm interested to see more of your overall general rogue thoughts if you are a die-in-the-wool rogue player. And if you've heard other content creators talking about bad things, or you've picked up some stuff from the Ravenhold Discord that may or may not be good. But overall, I've seen a lot of small positive tweaks. There are a couple more pain points that exist for Rogue, but that's got to be the case, right? You basically have to weigh your pain points with your positive points and take it from there. But again, my name has been Bay. Thank you very much for listening to me ramble on about Rogues. We've got Monks up next. I will see you all in the next Shadowlands Alpha testing video.